an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome everyone to another exciting episode that we are covering as a part of this special series of episodes that we are doing on jobs and workplaces. And in today's episode, we are being joined by Joseph Essey. I think a lot of people already know that. As we posted it on LinkedIn, I saw there were a couple of engagements there and really real interest on this topic because people want to know how the workplace has changed and how the economies have changed for the people, for the businesses in general. And I think Joseph can be a really good person to talk about that. So just to introduce him before I pass it on to him to kind of tell his own story, he's an experienced management accountant specializing in helping fast growing small to medium sized businesses get their financials right, grow their businesses profitably. I'm not going to read anything further from the LinkedIn because that's not what we are used to do on the Ultimate Global podcast. We generally pass it on to the speaker themselves and they tell their own story, and that's what we are here to do. So, you tell your own story, Joseph, to our listeners.
Thanks, Saurabh, and thanks, George, for having me on. Yeah, so my first of all, my business is the business I work within is Business Growth and Exit Specialists. We're a team of management consultants helping small businesses to scale up, grow, and I guess get ready for a successful exit. What I do within that is, so my role is a virtual or outsourced CFO. So it's quite a new role for the modern world. It's basically you got a finance manager, a CFO in a large company. I take those services and I'm tailoring them to smaller businesses, generally businesses that are growing quickly and I can't afford someone full time in that space, but want the financial discipline they need to succeed. Your listeners out there who are business owners or even work in small businesses will know that one of the largest challenges for small businesses is getting their cash flow right. A lot of small businesses will fail and be profitable because they haven't got their cash flow set up right. They haven't got their credit right, they haven't got their finances right. What I do is I bring that discipline into small businesses. So that's what I do. My background is in small business. A lot of CFOs, virtual CFOs will come from an accounting background. I am an accountant, but I'm actually a small business owner, small business manager first.
Right. I've met another CFO, virtual CFO, a couple of days ago. I think that this concept of becoming a virtual CFO seems to be taking a boom recently. Why do you think so, Joseph? And how did you come up with this idea of a virtual CFO? How did it pop up in your mind all of a sudden that I should become a virtual CFO?
Yeah, I guess the answer to that first question is, and sort of similar theme to what we're talking about today, is that flexibility. I think people who engage me, they like that it's a flexible arrangement, and it's tailored to the customer rather than the customer having to take something that's not right for them. There's definitely more understanding and knowledge about why businesses fail and why small businesses fail and the pain involved in that. So I think people are starting to realize, well, if that service is there, then it's something that they'll take on or inquire about. How I got introduced to it. My family had a business which we grew, a distribution business, which we grew pretty steadily. I was the CFO so I was a finance manager / CFO for about 10 years. But when I started with the business, I wasn't, as I said, I didn't have an accounting background. I actually had a marketing background. And we had a virtual CFO. That was almost 15 years ago now. So we were ahead of the curve. And he taught me all about accounting and finance. And I've since done my degree. And to be honest, I learned so much more under him. than I did, becoming a CPA. I learned things as becoming a CPA and getting that qualification, but I really learned a great deal about business and managing your finances for a business from him. So that's who introduced me to it. And I guess when we sold the business, that was always sort of top of mind as a possibility to get into.
That's pretty fascinating. That you were already ahead of the curve in that way, because this concept came 15 years ago. But coming back to the topic for today, Joseph, so we are talking about the new workplaces and businesses
Mm.
after the pandemic. How do you think that the workplaces have kind of evolved and changed after the pandemic? We know a lot of places have become hybrid. They have chosen to be more flexible to the employees, but again, from the employee's perspective as well, it has become pretty tough, considering
Mm.
the war that has happened outside Australia, and the rising interest rates. Things
Mm.
have not been as easy for people to meet their financial and budgets every month, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, certainly, what you spoke about is correct. Obviously, the hybrid work arrangements. That's a big thing that we have to thank the pandemic for. I think workplace attitudes have changed, or employee attitudes have changed a lot as well. And I don't think I'd be telling your listeners much they don't already know there. Certainly, people, particularly among maybe the younger generations, Gen Y, Gen Z, I'm seeing more of a spirit of entrepreneurial behavior, entrepreneurship, for better or worse. Um, I think that's a double-edged sword, um, and it's I fully get behind young people who want to start their own business and try something new, and I think that's how we get innovation, and that's how society moves forward for sure. But you can't. I don't think you can discount the experience you have from older people who have been there, done that. That school of hard knocks. It's important to get that as well. Um, but I guess the other part to your question there, in terms of young people, in terms of people struggling, um, yeah, it's I'm seeing a lot of that as well, and from the employee's perspective, but from the employer's perspective as well. I work with a lot of small businesses who are, yes, they're business owners, but a lot of them are, that's they're struggling to make ends meet too. Um, and I think I said to you the other day, Sarab, we probably live in the most affluent society that's ever existed, in the Western world, in terms of everybody has so many, technological gadgets and creature comforts, but it's what I'm seeing is a lot of people are finding it hard to meet those, those necessities. You know, Obviously housing, groceries. Yeah, it's getting harder.
And I think that's what we have seen in states like New South Wales and other states in Australia. Rental crisis has definitely become one of the top issues,
Mm.
um, in all aspects, because people can't afford to buy their own home, especially if you're a first time home buyer. Literally, you can't afford to buy a home in a city like Sydney or Melbourne.
Yeah.
You definitely have to go on a mortgage, and then you will get into a higher interest rate, repaying that loan for the rest of your life, and that
Mm.
doesn't look like a very good alternative as well. But I'm going to pass it on to George, because I was introduced to you around 6 months back, if my memory is not that wrong. And I met you through George only, at the BNI Alliance chapter. And my proactive self uh, sent an email to everyone in the BNI Alliance chapter. I can't forget that. And Joseph was the only person who responded back to that email. That was pretty good. And there
It
were a
says,
couple of things which happened after that, but that was pretty interesting. And I
yeah,
was really, really happy to meet you, Joseph, after that, because you booked in
yeah.
a meeting, and we came to explore more about each other. But George, what do you have to say about Joseph, and do you have any questions about him?
Well, I actually introduced Joseph into the BGS organisation because I saw him being a very valuable next generation benefit to that business. The owner of BGS happens to be a long-standing friend of mine and also a part owner in my business. And I introduced Joseph to him on the basis of this is a bloke that's the next generation for you to pass over to. So that's my thoughts on Joseph.
Thanks.
Um, as far as virtual CFOs and things like that, one of the things that people get confused about in sales is they say, oh, a salesman and a sales rep and a sales manager and a business development manager and a marketing manager, oh, they're all the same thing, aren't they? Well, they're not. And then when it comes into finance, oh, well, CFO, I've got an accountant, I've got a bookkeeper, I don't need a CFO. They're all the same. Well, they're not. And so even if you've got even if you've got an accountant and you've got a bookkeeper in your business, the CFO role is another level again. And to have somebody like Joseph, where a small business can call on somebody with his expertise and knowledge, that they can use him almost by the hour, because they don't have to have him there 40 hours a week and try and work out how the heck do I pay for this guy's talent. They can call him in on a once a week, once a month, once a 2 months, whatever it is, and he sets that up with them. And the importance of that is that you're getting top end management for a very, very economical and cost effective fee. So just like you can have an external business advisor and coach, like I am, you can have an external business advisor and coach in the actual finances. Joseph and I work very well together with companies because I can set up the blue sky. I can decide what we're going to do to increase the business, add more people in and all of that. And then I talk to somebody like Joseph and say, how do we afford that? Where does the money come from? What's the cash flow situation? Because you can in actual fact go broke making money if you don't get it right. And so the CFO is just like we have we have accountants and then we have auditors above that, and then you have tax specialists. The CFO is the next level up. It then gives a broader overview and a more strategic overview than your bookkeeper / accountant would normally do. Talking about the actual topic, Joseph, one of the things that I find is there's a lot of people that through various reasons are out of a job or the business is gone. And so then they decide to go into business for themselves, as opposed to the true entrepreneurial person that wants to go in business. So it's almost like, well, I can't get a job somewhere. I'm afraid if I get another job, I'm going to lose it anyway. Oh, I've got a great idea. Let's go into business for ourselves. That sort of a decision to me is a very dangerous one because you're not actually doing it from passion. You're not actually doing it from a burning desire. It's almost like, well, I've fallen off the boat and there's a piece of driftwood coming past. I'll just grab it. What's your thoughts on that, mate?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a very dangerous scenario. But yeah, it does happen. And people, I guess, people don't like rejection. They don't like losing jobs. They don't like that uncertainty. And they see other people doing it and might say, yeah, I can do that as well. That's why I guess when I was saying earlier, that's not to say that these people don't have certain skills that lend to being able to be successful at business. But a lot of the time, there's key fundamentals missing. They've never run a business. They don't understand what to do, and they've never worked under somebody or closely with somebody necessarily that is running a business where they've had a bird's eye view. because of that, while they might be good operators, even, they might be good at what they do, but they can't get the business side of it to work. And that's why I think if you are in that situation, and it's not always possible, but if you're able to get well, one or two things. If you're able to get that experience, great. If you can't hold down the job and you're insistent on it, starting your own business, get somebody in your business that can help you, that has that experience, particularly of running a business, finances. Someone like yourself, obviously, George, a business coach, in that scenario is I would say it's essential. It's an essential service to your business.
I think, Sarab, what people need to understand is people like myself, people like Joseph, we're not there for a career. We're not there to stay in that company for the next 30 years. We're in our own businesses and we've got our own plans. So we're quite happy to come along, find somebody, help them get to that next level. And if I can build somebody up and they then end up having a full-time sales manager or marketing manager, I'm actually delighted because I've done my job. The same with Joseph. Joseph will come in and he'll do a little bit of everything, but he's delighted if that business then gets to a stage and they say, okay, well, you've got us to that stage. But I think the other thing that's very important, Rob, that we talk about in this, because we're talking about the paradigm in the business post-pandemic. One of the things that's come up because of the pandemic is there's many a business that has struggled, and there's many a business that should have gone down during the pandemic that was kept alive because of the government payout. And they're still trying to work out and they're still trying to survive now. Many, many businesses in this country are run by what's known as the baby boomers. And the tragedy of baby boomers is the significant majority of baby boomer businesses, the small mediums, quite often those businesses will close when the person retires. Now, where Joseph and the BGS team come into play is it's a business growth, but it's also an exit strategy. So there's a lot of baby boomers that are in a business. They may want to be moving on in the next few years. This is the sort of time where they get somebody like Joseph in and BGS, and even I work in with the BGS team. And they can then start to structure and work out how they can actually sell the business and get some return rather than just shut the door because they want to retire.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And a lot of people don't. They might want to let go, but they can't because they don't know how to set it up. To the point where they're happy to let go. And my father, my uncles, they're all in that generation, so I've seen, and they're all business owners, so I've sort of seen it firsthand. But yeah.
Yep. So I think I wanted to also kind of talk about this thing, Joseph, in this podcast, that we are talking about the challenges. What are the challenges being faced by businesses? What are the challenges being faced by the people? But listeners might want to know, so these are the challenges, we already know about that. How can we solve those challenges? How can we tackle those challenges in a better way from a business perspective? How can we tackle those challenges from a layman's perspective, from a common person's perspective? So how can they manage their financials in a better way? What would you be suggesting to people like any common man in Sydney who might be listening to this podcast, because we want to reach out to them through this podcast?
Yeah, good question. I think from a business perspective, one thing that and particularly if you business owners that are looking to grow but are worried about the risks and taking on staff, and the lack of I guess or the difficulties in the employment market, the tight employment market. One thing that I strongly advocate for is the idea of incentivizing what I don't know if you've heard of this term, entrepreneurship, which is basically you've got an employee in an established company who has an entrepreneurial mindset. It's to foster that within the company. So, help them to embrace that, but within your business. So if you're able to do that, and I think that, for those employees or those young employees that are there and do want, to have an appetite for that, if you can offer that, I think you become more of an attractive business in what is a very competitive marketplace. If you're a small business that's looking to grow, I know, like obviously, and this is the next stage, but a lot of startups will offer businesses or offer employees, share an employee share scheme or profit share as a way of growing and reducing and keeping costs low. For the right employees, that's perhaps something that established small businesses might want to consider, particularly in the current market. And look, and this obviously as doing what I do and being an accountant, staying very close to your numbers and understanding, truly, the areas of your business that are the most profitable, how your costs are trending. It is a very fast moving marketplace. As anybody that follows the news sees where inflation is going, where costs are going, product supply. Being able to stay on top of your numbers, but more importantly, understanding the areas of your business that's the most lucrative. I think that sort of upstream of strategy and can inform that. Personally, it's probably not a popular thing to say, but people need to tighten the belts. Like I said, we live in the most affluent society. I think we've got a lot of things that aren't essential that people are spending on. That's just the reality. And it cuts close to home. I know for me, we've got in my family, I have 3 kids. We've got a monthly budget. I'm the budget Nazi in our house. There's been more than a couple of fights between me and my wife over spending, but we both see. Luckily, we're both sort of on the same path, and we understand if you can. I think that's important. If you're living within your means, and that's different for different people. But yeah, that's probably the most important thing.
Do you also think that here, kind of prioritizing the right things in your life and where you are spending your money is also
Yeah.
becoming very, very important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly right. And look, that's not a panacea. It's not going to solve everything necessarily. There's people that are really doing it tough and are doing that. But I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are used to a certain lifestyle. And it's just rethinking about, okay, well, what am I spending on and what's really important? And prioritizing the things that's a good first step, I'd say. To sort of surviving these tough times.
And how about these concepts of attrition and retention for HR people is also becoming very important because there have been a lot of layoffs, as you just told, in the recent times. We know that there have been a lot of layoffs in the US, especially in the tech industry. A lot of people have lost jobs, and that's where they have kind of figured out some other ways of maybe let's start our own business or let's switch to some other profession. Maybe it's not the right profession.
Yeah.
And I think here is the role of the HR and the learning and development people in a company to kind of make sure that, at firstly, why have we removed those people from our company? Why have they become redundant? Is it because we have not skilled them enough over a period of time, or did we go for the wrong people? We didn't recruit the right people, or we didn't upskill them to the right level that they become redundant after a certain period of time. So, do you think these kind of topics are also becoming important within a company to discuss?
Yeah. Look, absolutely. I think when we talk about upskilling, though, and I don't have empirical evidence that sits behind this. It's more, just what I've seen and from speaking to people, and I think there's at times there can be an overemphasis on technical skills, and not enough on what they call the soft skills.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people are missing that. And look, on myself, when I became a virtual CFO, I went from sitting behind a desk 10 to 12 hours a day to actually having to get up and sell my services, and it didn't come naturally to me. And then I look back the last 15 years and said, why didn't I go out and network more? Why didn't I meet more people? And it's those skills that I think in a lot of people are missing, and would actually make them better at their job, even if they don't have a sales job, even if they're just working internally. I think that would make them more valuable to their company, and probably give them more enjoyment out of what they're doing, to be honest. So even with your technology evolving, things like problem solving, communication skills, teamwork, planning, all of that becomes really important. Those human-based skills to implementing technology as well. So I think if I was saying something to HR, if there could be a greater emphasis on those skills, I think you have a much more resilient, valuable workforce on the back of that.
And I think one of the other things that I really want to discuss on this topic, other than, of course, the concept of upskilling and reskilling, is this concept of hybrid work. And I've also talked about it before, and I think, Joseph, you answered on it. But want to know George's perspective on that as well. How important do you feel, George, is becoming this new concept of hybrid work, where people are saying that, okay, instead of working 5 days a week, let's maybe try out 4 days a week, or maybe let's try out, instead of 48 hours, let's do 40 hours, or let's do 30 hours, reduce the time and have more time over the weekend. When we come back, we'll be more productive and efficient for the company, and maybe give us 2 days work from home, 3 days work from office. So such kind of flexibility is getting more and more popular. What do you feel about this, George? Is it something which you feel can be productive, or is it? I feel this is still being experimented at some stage, isn't it?
I'm glad you asked that, Sarab, because those that have watched a few of our sessions will know I'm not going to answer that first off. I'm going to answer a different question first. And I do this to him every time, Joseph. I just want to go back to you're asking the question about what can businesses do at a time like this. One of the things that I want to suggest that people think about is, what is your strategy to get through the next 6, 12, 18 months? So if you're a fairly profitable company, you can sacrifice some profit at the moment, and you can look for market share, and you can look for retaining your staff. If you're a company that's doing it a bit tough, then you need to think about, what do I do to get more money through the till now? And this is where people have to understand the difference between the role of marketing and the role of selling and the role of advertising. So marketing and business development's about putting money out and hoping to get that back. And let's not hope, let's have a strategy as to how we're going to get that back somewhere down the track. When times are tough, marketing's not real brilliant, because what's going to happen is you're putting out money today in the hope of getting that back in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So you then convert and you cut back a little on your marketing and ramp up your advertising. And advertising and sales activity is about getting money into the till today. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when everybody else is doing it tough and you're doing it tough, you then need to be able to pivot, and you need to be able to think about, where is the soft point of your opposition? Okay, so where's your opportunity, being able to take a little bit from here and a little bit from there? If you go out and you attack one company, they're going to know you're coming after them and they'll defend. But if you take a little bit out of 3 or 4 or 5 of your opposition, nobody's really going to be paying a lot of attention. And then suddenly, let's say you get 2% from 5 companies, you've just had a 10% increase, but not one of them has felt that because they're just thinking, oh, it's just the market. So you've got to have a strategy for that. Now I'll come to the question that you asked me. I think one of the things that COVID did show business people is that, hey, people actually can work from home. People actually do work, and in some cases work better when they're at home than when they're in the office. People can actually do things by Zoom. They can do it by all manner of things like Zoom. Now, Zoom gets a big plug from us every time because we use it a lot. But seriously, during the COVID, I embraced Zoom far more than I ever had prior to the COVID. And now I still use it. Where I used to travel for 2 hours to give somebody a free interview, now we do it by Zoom or they come to me. Okay? So it's the Zoom now has replaced the phone call because it's a step up from the phone call, but I don't actually have to be in Joseph's office, in your office. The idea of having hybrid workers, there's numbers of people that are wanting to work, but they've also got a lot of other things happening at the moment. You've got a lot of families now where mum and dad have to share the load of the kids. You go back a generation, the man went out and worked, and the little lady was barefoot and pregnant and in the kitchen look after the kids. That's long gone. So by giving the opportunity of having flexibility in work hours and flexibility in workplaces, you're actually opening up the doors to get talented people that can give you a day or 2 a week or give you 5 days a week, provided you allow them that flexibility of coming back and forward. And when times are tough and you're trying to get your business up and running or keep it up and running, then the more flexible you can be, the more opportunity you've got. Imagine if there's 6 varieties of fish in the ocean and you throw out bait that only attracts one, versus if you've got the bait to attract all 6. Your opportunity is a lot better of success.
Yeah. I absolutely 100% agree with that. Yeah. It's almost, when I look at the hybrid model, it's like I almost see like, is there really an alternative for businesses to not offer that? I sometimes think it's like now we're at a point where it's like the first time you give a toddler chocolate, right? Like you're not walking that back. You got 0 chance of taking that back from them. And everybody's had a taste now and like it. And to be honest, I actually think it, for most businesses, if you manage it well, like George said, it can be a net good, and open up your opportunities to attract better staff for your workplace.
My wife's just leaving a role and starting a role in a new organisation, and as it happened, she was speaking to the current owners in her existing role, and the owner said to her today, after she'd already given notice last week, would you consider staying if we could arrange for you to work 2 days a week from home? So a lot of the stuff that you're doing, you could be doing from home. Her response to him was, had that been something that was on the table earlier on, we may not have been having this conversation today. So it is a very valid thing. And I was talking to somebody in a recruitment not so long ago. I'm trying to think who that was. Anyway, our listeners probably doesn't know the person anyway. But they had mentioned that they were receiving a number of resumes now from people that are looking for a role. And in their resume, they are saying that the position must be a hybrid working. So here's people looking for a job and they're saying, but I'm only coming if you give me a hybrid. Now, go back 5-10 years, and if you were looking for a job, we're at the mercy of the employer. Well, now the employer in many industries are at the mercy of the employee. Obviously, if you're employing waiters and bricklayers and that, they can't really do a couple of days at home. It doesn't work. But there's many a job now that can be a hybrid. And again, it gives flexibility to your staff. It gives flexibility to your whole team management. And it can significantly reduce your overheads of running an office. If you've got 30 people in that office and they're on rotation, you could be running an office that handles 15 people, not an office space that has to handle 30 people.
Absolutely. I think even at my current workplace, so I've been working at LMS 365 for now 9 months. I remember when I was being interviewed, I was asked that, where do you want to work from? I said, well, I'm a person who would be more productive if I work in the office. I'm not a fan of working from home personally, but that is my personal choice. I'm not saying this to anyone else. And my manager who interviewed me said that we are pretty flexible. You can work from anywhere. And recently I went back to India and he said, if you want to work from there, we don't have any problems. You want to go 2-3 times a year back to India, you can go back, considering you are, delivering some sort of output for us. So literally working from anywhere has become a new concept. You can work from anywhere unless you are delivering or doing what you're supposed to do, and which I really like these days. But Joseph, thank you so much for participating in this episode. Before we kind of turn off for today, do you have any final thoughts on or any key takeaways for people who might be listening to this episode? Just to say that what have we actually learned out of it?
Yeah. Look, probably my final thoughts, sort of similar to what I said earlier. As business owners, and similar to what George just spoke about, you need, and in the current market, sure, you need to be conscious and focus on what's good for your business, and what works for your business. But if you can have that flexibility to work with, the market that's out there, the employee market, whether it's, as I said before, looking at things like incentives to motivate staff, like that entrepreneurial model, or looking at hybrid, to widen that, that net, I guess, that you're casting. It's vitally important, and we're in a different world to what we were 4 years ago. So George often talks about strategy, and I think it's an evolving thing. So if you start thinking what things were, the way you did things 3 or 4 years ago, or even 6 to 12 months ago, you could be out of date. So and the same goes with your numbers. Numbers can change. Your finances can change in weeks, let alone months or years. So if you're a good business owner, you're keeping on top of that stuff, and you're reflecting what it means for your business.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph, again. On behalf of George and myself, I really want to thank you for spending this time with us. And fortunately, George's internet has been working pretty well in the last few episodes, which I'm really thankful to Optus and the team who have actually resolved the issue.
Well, I'm told my new premises, Sarab, I've got fibre to the home, so that should be pretty impressive.
Yeah, except that it didn't work when we had the Honorable MP, Victor Dominillo, on this episode. And it was like you were hanging in for like a couple of seconds and hanging out a couple of... That's fine. We'll do some editing and we'll make you 40 years younger.
Politicians are used to waiting, Sarab. They're okay.
Yeah, we'll just edit it and make you 40 years younger. That should be fine. Easy. All right. Thank you so much, Joseph. We hope to see you again, and I hope
Thanks.
to meet you in person pretty soon.
This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kaura and George Mavros from Sydney.